All right, welcome in. We have some breaking news here on Philadelphia Eagles now. Yes, the NFL draft is coming up a week from Thursday, but the Birds have made a move in free agency, and they have a new wide receiver. Olamide Zaccheaus, formerly of the Atlanta Falcons, has been signed by Philadelphia. His agency, the Katz Brothers, did break the news just moments ago on Twitter with this nice, slick graphic here. And this is a little bit of a surprise for Philadelphia because Zaccheaus, pretty solid player, will break down why coming up here just around the corner. But first, a reminder to subscribe to the show because when the Eagles make a move, when breaking news goes down, we have you covered here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. And also, for the entire duration of the first round of the 2023 NFL Draft next Thursday, we're going to be live. Myself and Trace, Super Chat giveaways, taking down some beers. It's going to be a party. You don't want to miss it. And we're on the road, as you can see to my right, to 50,000 subscribers. So some more information here on Zaccheaus. He has some Philadelphia ties. Although he was born in Virginia, he played his high school ball at St. Joseph's Prep right in Philadelphia. Really good preparatory school that always has some really good high school teams. Won some state championships over time. Always players in the state of Pennsylvania. Zaccheaus, 25 years old, smaller wide receiver at 5'8", 193 pounds. He's really shifty, can move around the football field with these quick burst movements, even though his 40-yard dash at the NFL Scouting Combine when he was coming out of Virginia, where he played his college ball, wasn't all that fast at 4.49. Undrafted in 2019, but really impressed the Atlanta Falcons in preseason and in training camp, made the 53-man roster, and was able to really be a steady contributor for that offense over his first 4 years in the National Football League. And honestly, this is kind of a byproduct of the Falcons not having that good of a wide receiver room or depth chart. But 2 years ago, he was one of the better wide receivers on that Falcons roster. And last year, the number 2 guy behind Drake London. Now, like I said, a lot of that is because the Atlanta Falcons didn't have a lot of talented wide receivers on that roster, but Zaccheaus can certainly play. Comes in as a rookie, doesn't do all that much. 3 catches, 115 yards, a touchdown. Obviously, the yards per reception really, really high because, he had 3 catches, right? But then he starts to find his groove a little bit. 2020, 2021, and in 2022, sophomore campaign really starts to impress that organization a little bit outside of just being a good training camp and preseason player. 20 catches, 274 yards, a touchdown. And then in 2021, he caught my eye, popped off the tape a couple of times, 31 grabs for 406 yards. And last year, best year of his career, 40 catches, 533 yards, 3 touchdowns. Those right there, better numbers than what Quez Watkins had last year for Philadelphia. And I think this signing maybe puts Quez Watkins on the hot seat depending on what Philadelphia does in the 2023 NFL Draft. With that, our first poll question of today's show is this. For the real ones out there, shout out to the shirt. You might be familiar with them. You can find these shirts on our merchandise tab here on our channel, by the way. You might be familiar with Zaccheaus. Grade the signing A, B, C, D, or F. Let me know what you think about Howie Roseman's new acquisition down below in the comment section. For me, I like the signing. Came as a surprise to me. I saw the alert on Twitter, and I'm like, really? Philadelphia signed Zaccheaus? Like, this guy can play. He's a solid player. And basically, you lose Zach Pascal, who followed Jonathan Gannon to the Arizona Cardinals, and now you add some more depth on this roster at that wide receiver position with Zaccheaus. And for Quez Watkins, he has shown flashes of being a solid player in this league. 2 years ago, started to become a pretty solid vertical option. Last year, he was really disappointing. Now, he did suffer from some injuries last year, did Quez Watkins, but was not consistent enough. And in bringing in Zaccheaus, he is a shorter wide receiver who can be used kind of like a gadget weapon like Quez Watkins, has some quick speed, not as fast as Quez Watkins. And I think this move puts Watkins on the hot seat and at least puts a little bit of pressure on Watkins heading into year 4. You look at what Watkins has done in his first 3 years. He's had a little bit more production I guess, long-standing than Zacchaeus to a certain degree, but of course over the last 2 years, I think Zacchaeus has been the better player. Watkins, like Zacchaeus, didn't do much in his first season. Sophomore season, 43 catches, 647 yards. That's more than what Zacchaeus has done, but in 2022, Zacchaeus had the better campaign. Obviously, more opportunities. He wasn't playing on a roster with A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith, but the eye test tells you that Watkins did disappoint, and I've been talking about all throughout this offseason how Philadelphia needs to upgrade that wide receiver 3 spot. We've thrown out names like a Jarvis Landry, but honestly, I'd take Zacchaeus at this point of his career, 25 years old. You don't have the injury issues, a little bit quicker coming out of the slot than a guy like Jarvis Landry. And now Zacchaeus gets put on this roster where I do think that he could be a player on this Eagles offense with Brian Johnson calling the plays. Why is that? Well, you're going to get some open looks when you're playing with A.J. Brown and alongside DeVonta Smith. A.J. Brown last year set the record for the most receiving yards in a single season for Philadelphia with 88 receptions, nearly 1,500 yards and 11 touchdowns. I thought he was a bona fide top 5 wide receiver in 2022. DeVonta Smith set the record for the most receptions in a single season with 95 of them for nearly 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. One of the top wide receiver duos in the National Football League. And if anything, if Watkins does stay on this roster, that's fine. You still have a vertical threat as your wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4, and Zacchaeus just adds depth to that position, basically fulfilling that role that Zach Pascal had at the very least, although Zach Pascal a better blocker than what Zacchaeus is, but maybe the Eagles can develop Zacchaeus into a better run blocker and overall blocker within this offense. Zacchaeus a little bit smaller, right? Like we said a little bit earlier, 5'8", 5'9", depending on the measurements. And at that size, only ran a 4.49 40-yard dash coming out of Virginia, but he's a shifty player. Check him out on YouTube, some of his highlight reels. You'll see how quick he is with some of those short burst movements. And you look at the Eagles wide receiver depth chart now, which is updated here. A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith, all shoo-ins to make this roster. I'm not sure if Quez Watkins is a shoo-in to make this roster. Could be a trade candidate leading up to the NFL draft, after the NFL draft, during training camp, preseason, depending on if there are any injuries that other teams suffer at wide receiver across the NFL. Zacchaeus will also be competing for a spot on this 53-man roster. Then you look at some of the backups here. Britton Covey, the punt returner for the Eagles, didn't really wow you in that regard last year. And then Devon Allen didn't make the initial 53, put on the practice squad, caught that long touchdown pass in the preseason from the Cleveland Browns. The former trackster is obviously a burner, but needs to be a more refined player at that wide receiver position. So let's round out with this here. You know, you're in the front office, NovaCare Complex in South Philadelphia, right off Broad and Patterson, with Howie Roseman in this front office. Do you think Zacchaeus will make the final 53? I want you to give me a Y for yes or an N for no. My all too early prediction, he does, and he has more receiving yards than Quez Watkins does in 2023. Appreciate y'all for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, because who does breaking news faster and better and more in-depth than us? And also, we'll be live for the entire first round of the NFL draft next week.